Okay, we're just about to start.
All right.
Say hello in the chat, and
Hello, hello.
we'll be on in just one moment. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi, Andre.
Good morning, Tara. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Today is Monday, October 1st.
No.
Had to look. Yeah, it is. My phone says so. Here, look. October 1st.
November 1st.
No, I said November. Right? No wonder my checks are bouncing and everything. It's November 1st. And it is 10 o'clock? No, 11 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. But you know what? It could have been 10 o'clock because something happened to my phone. I don't know if anybody else there in TV listening land had the same experience, but I woke up and your phone said 6 when it was 7, and it was this whole fiasco. And then it indicated that it was set for a time zone someplace in America, Kubawanka,
Anakokin.
America.
America/Anatoka. It was
in
very
Ontario.
Weird. In Ontario, yeah.
Very
and
strange.
We are not in Ontario right now.
No. Who knows where we are? But it was interesting because the time was kind of
it was an hour behind, and then it was reanimated. Yeah, I missed my workout this morning, and I woke up and my alarm went off, and then it was like an hour before, so I went back to bed. But anyway, here we are. Here we are.
And what time is it in Victoria there, Drang? I see you. Good morning.
Good morning.
And
I think it's 4 hours difference.
Yeah, 4 hours difference.
Yeah, 4 hours behind.
Oh, so early riser. Nice.
Yeah. Anyway,
good to have you with us.
So today it's the letter L.
L.
So we're talking about limitations, liberation, and love in polyamory or open relating.
Not labia.
Not labia. Okay. We could talk about labias. Nice topic as well. Yeah. So what we'd like you to do today, if you're participating in the live, is tell us what you're feeling currently limited by in your relationships or your life.
Limited. Or what's on the other side of that?
What you want to be liberated
or what
into.
You've already gained in what kind of liberations you might have already gained in the I can talk about that.
Yeah. Anyway. And then the eternal question, what is love to you?
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me.
Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. So
yeah.
Oh, everyone knows that song.
But yeah, seriously, what is love? What is my understanding of it, and what is your understanding of it, and how much do we know of each other's love? And also the question of love language came up. We have a whole bunch to say about that as well, but maybe we'll get to that a bit later.
Yeah, we are. So if you're new to our lives, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Yes.
Or if you're watching the replays, that's awesome as well. So we do this every week at 11 a.m. Eastern. And I think by next week we'll have switched into Eastern Standard Time.
I think so, right? For some parts of the world, we do that observation of changing it because of the sunlight or lack of sunlight. And other parts of the world, they don't. And in some countries, some provinces, some states, they may and may not do it. So it's a whole mess. And some people are really for it, and other people hate it. And
awesome.
My producer just gave me a note that we need to get on with the show.
All right. So if you haven't been here before, we do this every week, and the replays are always in the group. In the Let's Talk Poly group has in the guides. Yep, has all the replays. Yes. If you're in TNA or you're joining us from our Let's Talk Poly page, if you join the group, you'll have access to all those free lives.
Right. Or on YouTube and soon to be Netflix too, I heard, right?
Oh, Netflix. We're going to be on Netflix?
I think so. I think there's
news to me.
There's ideas about maybe expanding the show and having
we should have our own Netflix show.
I think we should.
Amazing. So if you haven't already registered for a right sizing jealousy workshop, it's November 11th. It's being done through Shift. So we'll make sure we drop the link in the comments here, but it's also in the announcements. All right, let's get on with it.
All right.
So today we're talking about making the shift in your relationships from being ones of limitations to ones where you feel liberated in love and where needs, wants, and desires are met. So I thought we'd start first by talking about what does it mean what are limitations?
Right.
Awesome.
Okay, so what are limitations? They're kind of restrictions, limiting rules or circumstances that we might have, right?
Restraints,
yeah. And they may restrict the size or the amount, the occurrence, the intensity, the extent of things, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
all these ideas that might limit us in some way.
Yeah, we might feel constricted. Like I think when I'm feeling limited, I feel smaller as a human.
Sure. Yeah.
And you may feel small in your relationships.
Right. Yeah, you might feel as though you're not fully living up to your potential or your desires, your expectations. All those things may feel as though you are being limited in them or you are limited as a participant.
Yeah. So how do we become limited in all these things?
How do we become?
Yeah. Why do we have limitations on ourselves? Because probably when we're children, right, we don't feel limited.
Right.
You know. But
sure.
how do we like grow into, I guess, for lack of better words, our limitations?
You know, it's an interesting thing, right? Because a lot of the limitations that we might have, those perceptions of, have kind of been transferred onto us, right? Our parents, our culture, or whatever may have given us certain limitations, and some limitations might be very useful, very healthy, right? We don't necessarily want a toddler who is driving a truck down the highway. We're limited to only those who are graduated and licensed. So maybe it is good to have some limitations, but what limitations might we bring forward that might be less serving as to what we're wanting? How can we discard some of those limitations and have a happier, healthier, more enjoyable experience?
Did you answer my question?
No, I don't think I did.
I asked you, how do we become limited in our lives?
Well, it might be things that we inherit, or we might have our own limiting beliefs that we subscribe to, right? We might think, well, for example, I didn't think that I'd be able to be in a polyamorous, open, relating, swinging, whatever you want to call it, relationship. I didn't think that other people were, well, first of all, I didn't even know of it as a possibility, but I didn't think that it would be acceptable to others, let alone find participants who would do that. Right. So I was subscribing to my own fears, my own limitations, and I would then subscribe to what I thought was the model that I had to subscribe to, because I was limited in my exploration, my understanding, my beliefs of them, and then it was not well suited. So my limiting beliefs were working against me. I was not allowing for that.
But we get those limiting beliefs because we somehow are taught it in our life, either directly or through observation in our lives. So family, culture, religion, education, and like what you said, like heteronormativity and monogamy as being the norm is something that's pretty well ingrained in us. And I think it's the thing that people often, even when they are in open relationships or open relating, polyamory, it's something that's still kind of sometimes on your shoulder. Like it's still there. And some of what we do, I think, and I put myself in this category as well, is sort of tainted by that idea. Like we feel like something that we're doing is maybe wrong or not, you know?
Well, for sure. I mean, you mentioned that idea of heteronormativity or monogamy. And those seem to be not only the right ways, the so-called right ways, but anything outside of that is considered to be wrong or immoral, right? Yes, they are imprinted upon us, absolutely. They may be directly imprinted from our family or our society, or they may be even archaic and historically imprinted as a society. We really subscribe to them and think that it is the only way to be. But we can go beyond that, right? We can figure out what works best for us as individuals and be able to come to an understanding of that, a better way of being with it.
I think the belief that I run into a lot, and you know, I'd say it again of myself that I had, is that I can't have what I want. Like what I want is not available to me. So it's available to other people, but not for me.
That, as you say it like that, it makes me think of the idea of the universe of abundance and the universe of scarcity, right? So can I believe in the abundance? Can I, am I entitled to receive these things? Am I okay to get them? Or is there some type of perversion that exists that says, well, no, like, you know, you are meant to be small. You're meant to be poor, whether it's financially or emotionally or whatever way. So can I really be accepting that it is out there for me and I can simply accept it if I'm willing to accept it? Am I able to think that it's valid as a consideration, right? Which kind of goes back to my idea of monogamy, where I didn't know that there was any other way of being, that I did not think that it would be viable or acceptable, not only to other people, but to myself. Other people might have been living it and thought it was perfectly fantastic, but I had my own limiting beliefs that kind of prohibited it and negated the possibility of it.
And then what happened to you? Like, do you want to share a bit of a personal story here?
Sure. Well, kind of the last serious relationship that I was in, it wasn't working very well. I wasn't getting my needs satisfied, and I was trying to conform to the relationship the way that I thought I ought to be. And I was then taking the energies that were frustrated and channeling them into some things that were productive, like work. I would just throw myself into work, which was great, or other ways that were not quite as acceptable, and I was being unethical because I was having a relationship outside of my relationship. I had an affair, I cheated, and that was not a good way to be for the person, for any of us involved, right? So it didn't sit well with me. what I came to understand was that I could be more open and transparent about it and get a more fulfilling, loving relationship.
Right.
I became liberated by understanding that I could be ethically open about it and see that it was viable, that there were other people who also subscribed to this idea, and that it would be much more gratifying, a much better fit for me.
And sometimes we limit ourselves because of what we think. Sometimes what we think our partners want too, and what they expect of, we think is expected.
Well, absolutely. I thought, wow, there's no way that anybody's ever going to, have that same desire, those same feelings, or the same philosophies as I would. And then we come to find out, well, actually, yeah, I like that too.
Yeah, we were sort of lucky to have come together with it without things getting too far. Like, it was pretty early in our relationship that we realized that we wanted this to be like, the way we are. But, something other than monogamous.
Right.
But then we slowly developed that over time, which is what, as you do, right?
Well, yeah, we were able to develop it over time because we communicated openly about it, right? We'd say, well, how would you feel about this? Or what did you think of that? But it is interesting the way we came across it, right? We didn't come across it in a discussion per se.
No.
We were earlier in our relationship, and we were, by the way, for those of you who don't know, my mother and a couple of my other family relatives are members of this, and I think it's fantastic, but I will say how we came to be with it. So we were earlier on in our relationship, and we were doing
Is this a trigger warning?
Well, not that big a deal perhaps, but we were engaged in a rather complicated sex position, and I said that it'd be great if I had another set of hands, and kind of to my surprise, you said, yeah, that'd be fantastic, and I was like, wow, really? Like, you'd be into that? And you're like, yeah, I think I might. So we finished doing what we were doing somehow, and then
without that extra set of hands.
Yeah, exactly. And then not long after that, we that night, like probably within minutes, we jumped on to the computer and created a profile for ourselves and set about to find that, and the rest is, as I say, is history.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
so some people have heard that story before,
but we kind of
it is a good story. It always makes me smile.
It does, and it's cute in a way. But it's interesting because we did not set about to talk about it, and we're always advocating communication, right? We want to try and get to a position where we are able to, and create a position where we're able to speak about things openly, honestly, let it be known what our position is, and then hear what the other person has, either where we can meet in that, or where there is some type of, I guess, almost discourse, or where there's not that overlap, but we can find compromise in it if we're so inclined.
Yeah.
So talking about it is the ideal way, right? To find out what the limitations might be and what the liberations might be. So when we were able to announce that we would both be interested in it, it felt very liberating. I was like, wow, like here's something that I could do that I've been wanting to do, but might have been too afraid to ask for. Right? So I let it be known. I became liberated in that announcement.
But it doesn't always come that simply. No. And you might be in a relationship, and a long-term relationship sometimes, where you've been living in a position of limitation, your partner doesn't know, and then you may have some things that you're feeling as a result of it, like resentments and that sort of thing. May shut down, act out, feel isolated, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So what do you feel limited by? Oh, Aubrey's saying religion definitely shaped my core beliefs as a child and younger person. Since leaving in 2013, I was shocked how many things about myself restricted due to the shame imposed in my former faith. Yes, since then it's been unlearning. Yes, me making the rules, choosing my values and life path. Oh, that's awesome. Yes, liberation. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, very good.
Awesome. So, what do you feel limited by? And I think we're going to get into what to do if you are in a relationship, because like I said, it doesn't always come easy in a situation like we had to bring it up when it's something, a long-term relationship where you haven't been talking about it or that sort of thing.
So what you're saying is, if you've already been in a relationship and it's been kind of the foundation has already been set out, you have certain agreements and parameters already, how do you revisit that, and how do you open those things up?
We're not going to get into detail. We're going to talk about a couple things, but I think that's where I think a lot of people struggle, is that when they start off from a position of monogamy, even if it's in a new relationship, but I think it's harder if it's a longer established relationship and you discover things about yourself, either around your sexuality, eroticism, or your relational diversity, like how you want to be in relationships, and then having to bring that up and what that feels to the other person if it's not something that they had considered previously.
Though, I want to, I don't want to just poo-poo on limitations as though they're a terrible thing, because sometimes they're put in place and they might make us feel a certain sense of security, perhaps, right? There might like some healthy boundaries, healthy parameters. But it's interesting. I was speaking to a couple not long ago, and they were telling us they've been lifestyle swinger, polyam, open relating, the whole thing for some time. But they were announcing how, and it's not uncommon, that they had certain agreements, certain limitations put in place initially. For example, they were not having penetrative sex, or they're not having kissing, tongue kissing. And that made them...
just tongue kissing or just kissing?
I think it was tongue kissing. Well, they kiss on the cheek. They're
kissing on
French,
the cheek,
right?
is fine,
but we're talking about intimate kissing, right? But I think that these limitations, if you will, were put in place because they were new to it and not yet familiar with how they might feel about it. So they made these agreements. They would limit their interaction with these people. So these were healthy limitations that they had come to with agreement, both of them feeling that it would make them feel more secure because they were still new to each other, new to the relationship and all that. In time, they were able to talk about it, and they both decided that they were going to amend those limitations. They were going to find another way of being. But the initial offering was to kind of offset some of their feelings of discomfort or insecurity, right? The question is, though, how do we come to these agreements where we feel as though it is compromise out of desire as opposed to a restriction that might lead to some form of resentment?
Yeah, there's a bit of a difference of making some, let's call them rules. I don't like the term rules at the beginning, but if they're mutually agreed upon for some reason, then that's one thing. But then if they aren't and they're enacted to address a fear and it's an ongoing thing, then sometimes those are the things that have to be looked at. Like how do we remove those fears? Exactly. So we're going to get into a little bit about that. But let's move on to liberation.
Okay, let's talk about liberation.
I love being liberated.
So what do you mean by liberation?
I think liberation for me is a bit more is the freeing yourself from your limits. So freedom from limits, thoughts, or behaviors. So being liberated, moving from a place where you might feel enslaved, even not in a sexy good way, by your limitations.
Right.
So there's a release of some sort.
So
what do you think?
When I think about the idea of the liberation, I think about really returning or coming to a position of my authentic self, where I feel as though I'm not necessarily having to restrict myself or feel as though I have to curtail my behavior, but one that is always in consideration of the other, for sure, but one that feels as though it is more the way I might be naturally. So I feel liberated to be my true self. So if I am enslaved emotionally, not in a good kinky way, but the other way, I am not free to express myself. Whereas when I feel liberated, I am feeling secure in my own position, emotionally, physically, sexually, whatever, and able to really be my authentic self.
When do you feel most liberated? Can I ask you that question? Is that a hard question? It's not in the notes.
It's not in the notes. It's not lip service at all, and it's not because you asked me, but this relationship has made me feel most liberated. I feel like I'm able to openly express myself in this. My girlfriend Arzu, I feel very liberated when I'm with her as well. My mother. I mean, there are other places, but I guess when I am, running up a mountain and I'm by myself in my thoughts, I'm able to really be who I am with that. But at the same time, I am hypersensitive to my own thoughts and feelings, and I still become aware of whatever limitations I am imposing upon myself, what I am subscribing to, the idea that I am not enough of this or too much of that, whatever those limiting ideas. What about yourself? Where do you feel most liberated?
That's a good question.
That's a great question.
I think I feel most liberated. I do feel liberated in this relationship. So from a relationship perspective, I definitely feel liberated because I feel like we can. Oh, all of a sudden got dark. There must be a cloud. I feel like I could be myself and I can talk about anything with you. And that's a big shift for me in a relationship. I've always felt in some way that I had to be careful or be, I don't know, it was more fearful in my relationships in the past.
So what do you think is different that makes you feel less fearful? And how could you be more of yourself now in this? What's the difference then?
I think because I know with certainty that I can communicate and say what it is I need to say to you, and you will listen, and from a place of understanding and wanting to see where we could go from there.
Interesting.
I think part of it's your therapeutic background. It's your personality for sure, but it's also, I think, your therapeutic background and ability to not take things personally. I think that's the big difference, is that I can say things to you how I'm feeling, and you're not going to take it to mean, like, if I'm not feeling desire or something like that, you're not going to say, oh, I'm not, you might not, you're not going to take it to mean, oh, that means I'm not desirous. Like, you know, you don't make it about you. You
don't personalize it.
You don't personalize it.
Right.
Thank you. Having a hard time communicating that. See, that's what I like.
Okay.
And then I think I feel liberated too when I'm doing something creative. So when I'm doing my aerial or moving or dancing or being with people, I feel the most like I can, like, my people. Like, sometimes I just feel like I'm with my humans.
Right.
Like, we were with some new friends that we have this weekend, and I just feel like I could just be me, and I didn't have to be anything else. And I think that's when I feel most liberated, when I'm not thinking about what I'm doing, not questioning it. And it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. But, you know, as you said that, it makes me think back to my level of joy, right? So if I have a high level of enjoyment, I'm feeling free to go out and do that. I'm feeling, those restrictions come off. So I guess when I'm feeling less joy, is it because I'm feeling more restricted? Am I feeling as though the limitations prevent me from feeling that way? So maybe that can be the barometer. Maybe it's part of the criteria we use to determine, am I feeling liberated or am I feeling limited?
And you can do that both for yourself personally, but also in your relationships. Oh,
Absolutely.
I got ahead of ourselves. So now love. What is it to be? What is love? What is it to be in love? I feel like,
you know, that's such a great question, because people always say, I love you, or I love them, or whatever. But yes, what is your understanding of love? And what is my understanding of love? And how much overlap is there? You know, how do we really know the sentiment, the feeling associated with that word, that symbol that we use, which we call love?
It's sometimes you say to me, well, what does it mean when you say I love you? And like, what are you feeling? And I'm like, I'm feeling like this. That's what I'm feeling.
Right. So
like, I can't describe it in words.
But I want to know what those words are.
Oh, we got some weird focus thing.
So what are those words meaning? What is the emotion that you're feeling? What is the thought that you're having at that time?
Connection, attraction, desire,
connectedness.
But
I want to talk about also the other ideas of love connected, you know, the fear of love, right? Where we might be saying that we are open relating and swinging in that, and that's wonderful. But then there's also another component called polyamory, which means many loves, and we might want to be with each other in loving ways. But what happens when somebody really catches feelings for us? When they fall in love with us, are we welcoming it? Or are we like, oh my God, like, you know, I wanted to interact with them. I wanted to be in a loving way with them, but I wasn't quite prepared for them to be in love with me. Or if I fall in love with somebody, or you fall in love with me, am I willing and able to entertain the idea that we have this kind of relationship, but you might have some profound, deep, real love relationship with somebody else? What does it mean? How does it affect us? Where will we be able to sit with that? Is it a comfortable thing, or is it an uncomfortable thing?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then
for you, or for the other and for the other people that you're in relationships.
All the parties involved. And then I also think about love in the aspect of codependence. Right?
Yes.
So does I like that you love me because I feel connected. I like that you love me because I feel, you know, wanted. I like that you love me because I feel that, and it points back to all the needs that I'm wanting that you're fulfilling. But is that in a way codependent? Is it, you know, can I be secure in my own position and then allow for your love, or do I need your love? Because people often say, I need your love. I need you to love me in this way. And it is perhaps filling a narcissistic need or whatever it is, and it's fine, but let's be aware of it so we can make the determination. Am I able to be secure in your love? So what happens is very often is people start opening up your relations, and they're like, well, what happens if they catch feelings for somebody else? What happens if they become sexually, romantically, emotionally involved with the other person? Where's that going to leave me? And the other person might say, well, you know, don't worry, baby, I'll never leave you, which we don't know.
Yes.
but somebody said the other day, and I thought it was fantastic. They said that they became secure when their partner said to them, I can't imagine my life without you. And that was gratifying to them, but also it indicated to the other person that they loved them and didn't want to have a life without them. And I think that made them feel more secure in that way. So it's quite fantastic, quite beautiful. But just being aware of what our needs and desires are and where do we sit with those things.
Because sometimes one of the rules people make when they're first opening up is don't fall in love with somebody. It's like,
how do you control it? And don't let them fall in love with you. Don't be too adorable on your date now.
Yes. And what does that mean? And why is that threatening? Can we have the capacity to love more people? Well, and that's what I believe is that we can.
But that's a tennis analogy again, right?
So tennis.
I love you, you love me. Don't let anybody else fall in love with you. So here it is. We go up, for those of you who don't know the tennis analogy, and I'm sure everybody by now has heard me say it 1,000 times, but I'll say it really quickly. You and I like playing tennis. We decided we're going to play tennis together. And Monday we go play tennis, and then we had a good time. I say, hey, what are you doing Wednesday? Want to play tennis again? We go out and play tennis on Wednesday. And then I say, hey, Saturday, you want to get together and play tennis? We play tennis again. And then at one point I said to Tara, I like playing tennis with you so much. I prefer that you don't play tennis with anybody else.
Oh.
It would be absurd. But am I threatened by the fact that you might be playing with other tennis partners? Probably not. I mean, you play tennis with me because you want to play tennis with me. Well, why would it be any different with love? So being polyamorous, being open like that, we are saying, well, I feel secure enough in my love that I could imagine that you could love somebody else. I think it's the aha moment of monogamy as a model not really working, saying that I'm going to subscribe to this belief that you are going to be everything for me for all of eternity, and I will have no other desires, I will have no other expectations, and that if I have any desires, expectations, I know that you'll fulfill all of them forever and ever and ever. What an unrealistic expectation, and what a burden to put on the other person, and what a lack of it's a fallacy to me that I can no longer subscribe to. So I think that you could be out and love somebody, but still desire to come back to me and want to be with me. And that would be really the demonstration of love, that you choose to be with me, that you want to be with me.
I love that. We choose over and over again. I was just going to say, and we know it not to be true that you can only love one person. We know it. We have friends, we have family, we have colleagues, pets. We love all these people in different ways. And I think when we first started dating and we started into non-monogamy, I was actually a bit intimidated by your love of your friend and your other girlfriend, and found it a bit threatening. And then I got to know her, and then I love her too. And then you realize that your love from her does not take away anything from me. In fact, it gives something to me. It gives me an extra person to love, and like that coming back to me thing.
But I hope also that when I'm with you, I am present with you, and you feel my desire to be with you. You feel my presence with you, right? My love for you. So just because I love somebody as well doesn't mean that the love I'm going to have for you is going to be limited or only, circumstantial, that it is all going forever.
Drang is asking, why is it a burden? A burden to put on someone else? Being all those things.
Asking that other person to be all those things, because
if you get past the delusional egoism.
Right. So I might, initially I might have this idea that I'm going to, be in this mono relationship where they are going to be my everything all the time. And it seems like it's a burden to ask that of the other person. Just like if you were to ask that of me, that I should be able to be, your end all. And what happens if I
fall short in one area of your expectation? I think that's more what you mean.
I think so.
Unlearning possessive love was an early part of my wife's polyamory journey. We can't claim another human like that. Love is endless. I love that.
And liberating.
It's been so liberating. Awesome. Yes. It's interesting that often when I'm working with couples, one of the things they say, one of the things I ask, which is, some people say, oh, I can't believe you asked that. Like, what makes you want to stay together? And they often say, because I love them.
Right.
And then I'm always wanting to dig into like, well, what does that mean to you? And what might you do differently because of that love? Anyways, it's so interesting. Love is used. It's hard to describe, I think, love. And then, we talked about that. Codependence, we talked about that. Okay, cool. Oh, I was thinking, it's funny, when I was preparing for this, for those of you who are close in age to us, you may be familiar with the song What is Love by Howard Jones. I loved Howard Jones in the 80s. And so I looked up the lyrics because I thought it'd be interesting, and found out there was some really poignant points there. He says, what is love anyway? Does anybody love anybody anyway? Can anyone love anyone so much that they will never fear, never worry, never be sad? The answer is you cannot love this much. Nobody can. I don't know. Do you believe that?
That you can love anybody so much that you'll never fear?
Yeah.
To me, the initial word that comes to mind is delusional. But I suppose it is possible, but I don't know that it would be possible for me.
So he says the answer is they cannot love this much. Nobody can. That's why I don't mind doubting. And then then this was a part I really liked. And maybe love is letting people be just what they want to be. The door must always be left unlocked. To love when circumstance may lead someone away from you and not spend time doubting.
Right.
So you leave the door unlocked. And I think that's a really good analogy for polyamory, is that you leave the door unlocked and that they continue to come back to you. Even, you do the thing that could potentially lead them away from you, but they still come back.
They come back by choice, which is kind of like, in marriage, if I'm not mistaken, there is such a thing called a marriage contract, right?
Oh, yes.
And it is legally binding and such. In our relationship, you're free to go at any time, and you do go. And then you desire to come back, and you do come back. Right. And I think that demonstration makes me feel secure.
Awesome. So we covered a few of these things. So Aubrey's saying there's always going to be fear sometimes. Yes.
But we can talk about the fears and find out what are they connected to, right? Where are we feeling these fears, and how might we come to a position of greater security to minimize the amount of fear? They may not ever completely vanish, but we can definitely gain security by talking about them and finding out what are they really connected to. What are the things that we might be able to do to increase our sense of security?
I'm seeing Drang is saying egoistic, delusional concept of self. If one of us transcends to the luminous self, then love from there is timeless.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Okay. So then how can we make the shift from being limited to being liberated in our relationships and ourselves? So we covered some of these things, but let's repeat them for a good measure.
Let's do it.
So number one is understanding what's limiting us, both for ourselves personally and in our relationships. And I think this is the big one. I know when I work with people in my practice, that this is the first thing we tackle first. And it's probably the thing that takes the longest, is like, what are my limiting beliefs, like you talked about earlier? Like, what are the stories I'm telling myself about the way things are, the ifs, ands, buts, cannots, should nots, would nots, and all those things. So, and then in our relationships, looking at what limitations might be in place for those.
Okay.
You fixing your tie?
Yeah, it's bothering me.
It's bothering you. It's so cute. I love that one, the plaid.
So, do we move on to living limitlessly?
Sure. So number 2 is living limitlessly.
Right. So what do you mean by that? Living limitlessly.
Well, I'm going to steal a quote from Thrive Global, and we can put the link to that article.
Thrive Global, right.
They had 5 things that you can do to live limitlessly, but a limitless life is one where you live according to your values and achieve all your goals, which are set by you. So your values and goals, which you set by you, not by society or individuals around you.
Okay, so right there, the living the values. So I think of myself as a social butterfly, and I think that I should be able to love as many people as possible, and that they should love me also. And sometimes I think that I want to kind of turn down the volume of that, because, well, I have this idea that maybe it's not so accessible to other people. So I'm not living those values. So when I am really living those values, I am more confident in being able to express that I want to love many people and that I want the love of many people. So in a sense, that is living my value when I allow for that.
And getting an understanding of what you value the most. Like, what are the things you value in your life, and setting goals. I love the goal setting. It's one of my things. I think it's always good to have something that you're striving for, and to strive even beyond what you believe is possible. because I feel like you're more likely to get what you want if you strive even farther.
Well, setting the goals reminds me of the cure, right? Knowing what it is you're wanting, finding a way of getting it, and being happy having it. But for many people, yes, setting the goals is the hardest part. They don't necessarily know what it is they're wanting. But we would ask you then to kind of look introspectively and find that out. And if you don't have the capacity to do it, if you don't know yet how to do that, then find someone you can speak to. Find an awesomeness coach or a psychotherapist, and discover what it is that would really turn you on. What are the things that you're really wanting? What are those goals?
Yeah. What you want to be liberated into. Like imagine it.
Right.
One of the exercises and things we do in our program is relationship vision, and imagining what your life, your ultimate relationships could be in your life. And sometimes it's really hard for people to do, because they're like, they layered on top of that is often those limitations that they have for themselves and what they think that they can truly have. So you can also, like I said, set relationship goals and aspirations.
But I like the way that in setting those goals, you might be looking at, are they limited? Are we already imposing restrictions on them? Or are they just goals that we could think that we're able to obtain? So we might not yet believe that they're obtainable, but that shouldn't necessarily stop us, right? Because we might be limited in what we're putting as the goal. So can we set goals that are beyond our limitations?
Yeah, I used to, your mom just lent me a book called something about write it down. I wish I had brought it here. It's over there. But I used to do this when my marriage broke down in 2000. I started a practice annually of writing, doing some journaling one day in a year, and then writing down goals. And I would make these, what I thought were these most audacious goals, like huge goals. And then come to find, because I wrote them down, that I actually took steps. Like I didn't do it consciously, but I actually took steps towards those things. And by the next year, often all, if not more, those were achieved. Now, not that I'm saying you should just close the book and forget about them, but if you can bring them into your consciousness and by writing them down, but then also making steps to do it, I think you're more likely to get it. So make big goals.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know what those goals looked like, and did you exceed those goals? Were those goals big enough? Right. So when we're first coming out of the gate, maybe the goals are reasonable or sort of, the right size, but are they big enough? Are we dreaming big enough? Are we really going to satisfy? Or are we limiting our goals? And could we look back after and say, wow, like that's all I was asking for? Like, I've got the whole universe that is there waiting for me.
I think the first year I did it, my goals were kind of small. And then after the second year, and then I realized, oh, I got all those goals. That's okay. I'm going to make them crazy. So then my goal was always, every time I made them, was to make them even wilder than I imagined. And I thought it was so exciting that one of my goals was to have a solo art show. And I thought that this was so impossible and out of reach, and then just did it.
The only limitations we know are the ones we subscribe ourselves to.
Exactly. So that was number 2, living limitlessly. So setting goals and aspirations and planning to continue to move forward. Okay, number 3, setting agreements or intentions or aspirations in your relationships that support being limitless for all involved rather than limiting. So similar to the other one, but more in your relationship. And I thought making compromising, because sometimes we can't, you have to do some compromising in your relationships, right?
For sure.
And you might need to work towards something.
Right. And we want to, in making the compromise, we want to be considerate, right? Both in what we are agreeing to and what we are considerate of ourselves and of our partners. We want to find those things. So yes, there will be need for some compromise in the agreements, but it should not be too far where we feel as though it's going to lead to resentment, right? So we need to be open and honest about what it is we're wanting and not wanting.
Or have a plan of moving to that place.
Perhaps so.
If it's something new or someone's new to something, it's like having time, and setting up and checking in.
Yeah. Well, our business meetings, right? We always suggest that we have regular check-ins and find out, how are we doing? Let's take stock. What's working less, and how might we be able to really, celebrate the things that are working, but also be willing and able to address the things that are working less.
I'm smiling because I'm thinking that you called a business meeting the other day because we just got into a new place, and there were some things agreements you wanted to have in place for the living situation.
The quality of life issues. Yes.
Yes. So number 3 was setting agreements and intentions.
You didn't mention the 60-40 rule.
Oh, 60-40 rule. Yes, tell about that.
Well, in the compromise, compromise of the agreements and limitations and things like that. So we are wanting to set about whether we are old or new in this. We want to make sure that the compromise, and this goes both ways, as the recipient and the offerer of these compromises and these agreements, are we honoring the 60-40 rule, right? So 60-40 rule, we are playing cops and robbers with our little brother. And if we're always going to be the cop and always arresting the poor little guy and putting him in jail and beating him and the whole deal, it's satisfying for us, but maybe less satisfying over time for them. And if they're not getting enough in return, they may lose interest. So we know in psychology that there's a 60-40 balance, that we have to give enough to make the other person still interested. So when we are making these compromises, these demands, let's try and imagine what it's like to be on the other side of it as well. And can we get enough of balance where it's of interest to the other person? And when they're interested in playing cops and robbers, well, we're going to be playing cops and robbers more often, and it'll be satisfying for us as well. So we want to give, not just because we're going to get to the back, we want to give out of generosity and love, hopefully. But if that falls short, then keep in mind, it's got to be amicable for both. Otherwise, it's just not going to be so fantastic, unless that is your relationship, unless you're totally like, which might work too, but in the majority of cases, it's 60-40, please.
Yes, well, I was giggling because I was thinking back to our last week's topic, which was on kink, and thinking about dom-sub relationships and saying that someone might want you to beat on them and be submissive the entire time.
Sure, but they are consenting to that. They're in agreement with that, and they're actually getting their needs met in that, right? They're being gratified in that sense.
And it might not continue to be, even if you're in that situation, you may not feel that way if things are imbalanced. But
yeah, for sure.
I was thinking about when you were saying one of the questions in our relationship visioning is what do you want to give in a relationship and what do you want to receive in a relationship? So what are the things that we ask people to ponder on? So
knowing what it is you're wanting.
Knowing what it is you're wanting. Yeah. So number 4, I think.
And then being able to communicate.
Exactly. Understanding what love means to those we're in relationships. So how do we know what love is between us? What is my understanding of love and what is yours?
Right.
And communicating it.
Right. So really trying to identify what is at play in our desires for it. What are we getting out of it? What are we wanting? What might we be able to offer back from it? But yeah, being able to try and really come into tune with what it means for us and communicate that, and also to be able to hear what the other person is saying about it. Right? Yeah. It's great to be able to announce it, but are you able to hear it?
Yes. Listening, active listening.
Active listening.
Sure. Yes, and you mentioned at the beginning, but one of the things is understanding how people receive love and give love, and we often refer to love languages. There's a quiz online.
The love languages.
But somebody in our group asked us actually to talk about that today, and found out through one of our other members that the author is known to be very homophobic, and was really disappointed to hear that, because it was something, love language is something I often get my clients to do the quiz, because it's good to understand what their partners are, where they're coming from.
Right. And it's become such commonplace. It's just part of our lexicon today that people speak of love language and people kind of get it. But then now we come to understand that this author was, or is, or perhaps was, rather homophobic, and that does not fit well in our community of inclusion. But it doesn't necessarily negate the idea that what they said, these philosophies, these tenets of love language, are negated. Because we don't necessarily subscribe to their political ideology, doesn't mean that what they were putting forward in the love languages is invalid. In fact, they still are valid, but we take exception to that. Maybe we thought we'd mention.
I guess it's you just don't want to pad the pockets of somebody who lives that kind of reality. I don't know.
Well,
it's a tough one.
We'll pray for them and pray for them. Enlightened.
Oh my gosh, you're so funny.
We'll see them as sick and suffering.
Okay, so number 4, understanding what love means to those we are in relationships with and to ourselves, obviously. And then number 5, I love this one, and I think you alluded to this earlier, is make happiness your business, not anyone else's. And what we mean by that is being happy and in love and loving yourself.
Oh yeah. Well,
and getting it from within. And that's a really hard thing.
I think it might even be impossible to receive love if you don't love yourself. Although some people would argue that, and they say, that maybe you come from a place of, unfortunately, like you've been abused, or There are things, and you might not feel that level of stuff, and then we have to love that person until they start loving themselves. But really, it is our own homework, our own job to really start loving ourselves. And that comes back to the earlier idea of what we're talking about. How do we love ourselves? By doing, esteemable acts and all those things. So we build the love within ourselves, so that way we can feel more secure, and we can receive the love of others, and we can give love to others as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So finding out what lights you up.
Right.
What lights you up? Playing hockey.
Playing hockey, but also sex for sure. But being in loving relations with people, platonic, otherwise, just that human connection, feeling as though I am of service, hitting it, getting, knowing that I'm on point makes me feel good about myself. All those wonderful things. Yeah. Yourself?
Yeah, same. What lights me up is relationships and seeing people, even especially more even now that COVID and all that stuff, seeing people seems even more special. It's like you want to hug people longer and
not too long
and tighter, and just really spend quality time. Quality time is a huge thing for me. So let's just quickly go over those 5 things again. Understand what's limiting us, both for ourselves personally, live limitlessly, set agreements, intentions in your relationships that support being limitless, understanding what love means to you, and making happiness your business. Those are the 5.
Awesome.
So I guess we have a little bit of homework for them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Some actions for you to do. So you heard all this.
Right.
And if you missed part of it, rewind, go back and watch the replay. So what we want to do, we want you to have the shift. We want you to feel like you're in relationships that feel limitless. So look at what your current personal and relationship liberation, limitations, so many L words, limitations are. So find out for yourself what those things are. So do those 5 things. And how can I communicate this to others? Think about those 2 things, write them down, journal,
And if you find it difficult to communicate those things to other people, then what does that play there? How might you come to a better relationship with it? Because maybe it's difficult to announce those things because you're not yet comfortable yourself with announcing them. Again, that's, a perfect opportunity to work with somebody such as yourself, where we are going to become more familiar. So I think one of the best things about psychotherapy, about talk therapy, is that we articulate, we hear it, and then we can find how it really resonates with us. So if it's difficult initially for us to say what we're wanting, we repeat it and we get to hear it, and it becomes more digestible, more acceptable to ourselves. When it's more acceptable to ourselves, then we can communicate to others and see how they're going to be. But if we are not yet so secure, it's not to say we can't do it, but it's not going to be as fluid, as easy.
Yeah,
but we can definitely learn to achieve a new position in that.
Because people aren't mind readers. Even when we've been with someone for a long time, they can't mind read.
Yeah.
And sometimes we assume people will know what it is we want.
Or they'll tell us what we want.
And they may not, or assume what we want and do something different.
Right.
Which is the tricky part.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good.
Limitations, liberation, and love.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's a wrap. So tell us what you thought. Tell us if you do your homework. We'd love to hear more in the chat. And
suggestions for M's.
Suggestions for M. We have ideas for M?
Oh, yeah. We always have ideas.
That's what I want to do for M.
Okay.
Okay, everyone. Have a great Monday, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks.